maybe just as we're arriving, it can be a really good moment to just let ourselves ground and consciously arrive with everyone who's coming here. So to arrive in ourselves, to arrive in Sangha. Just feeling the support of the earth, the welcome of the space around our body, and the kind of energy of our intention that has brought us here together. Maybe just allowing ourselves to feel into the space or the quiet also as we arrive. Okay, so welcome everybody. And people are still arriving, so if you see my eyes going off to the side, it's just to let people in. So lovely to see many of you who I know here, and for any of you whom I don't know, I'm Sumedha, and I'm in the south of France. And just to say a bit about these sessions, that the kind of main part of the session lasts for an hour, and within that there's some chanting, and there'll be a guided meditation, and also some reflections. And then after the hour, there's 15 or 20 minutes for sharing or questions, so to come together also in sharing community. So yeah, so let's start with some chanting. Oh, and importantly, as all of you who know me know, I live off grid, so if my internet drops, I apologize. I will come back, so just stay here. It dropped for the first time last week, and I'm hoping it's not going to do it again. So not last week, last time. So let's start with the chanting, and I'll put the link to the chanting book in the chat. So if you click on that link, it will open the chanting book. And we'll start. I really love to recollect the refuges and precepts. So let's start with that on page 3. And for any of you who are new to chanting, just letting yourself feel into it, or letting yourself feel into what it's like to recollect these qualities in this way. So the triple gem, that which is awake, the Dharma, the teachings or nature, and Sangha, community, and then we'll chant the precepts together. So page 3 for the refuges and precepts. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from intentionally taking life. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kame sumichachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from misuse of sexuality and the senses. Musawada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from speech that is false, divisive, harsh and meaningless. Surameraya majjapamadhatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from intoxication which leads to carelessness. And then we can go to the recollection of the triple jewel on page 4. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati sata deva manusanam Buddho Bhagavati Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Panayiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhiti Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ujupatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Nyayapatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Samichipatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yadidam Chatari Purisa Yugania Tapurisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anutarang Punyaketam Lokasati. So for anyone who's just joined, the link to the chanting book is in the chat. And I thought we could chant the Mangala Sutta, so the highest blessings, which, although the language can sound a bit kind of distant, I find it can be a really beautiful contemplation on that which can support our practice, and bring a sense of blessing also in our life. So page 5, the Mangala Sutta, the highest blessings. Thus have I heard that the Blessed One was staying at Savatthi, residing at the Jeta's Grove, in Anathapindika's park. Then in the dark of the night a radiant Deva illuminated all Jeta's Grove. She bowed down low before the Blessed One. Then standing to one side she said, Devas are concerned for happiness and ever long for peace. The same is true for humankind. What then are the highest blessings? Avoiding those of foolish ways, associating with the wise, and honoring those worthy of honor. These are the highest blessings. Living in places of suitable kinds, with the fruits of past good deeds, and guided by the rightful way. These are the highest blessings. Accomplished in learning and craftsman skills, with discipline highly trained, and speech that is true and pleasant to hear. These are the highest blessings. Providing for mother and father's support, and cherishing family, and ways of work that harm no being. These are the highest blessings. Giving with Dharma in the heart, offering help to relatives and kin, and acting in ways that leave no blame. These are the highest blessings. Steadfast in restraint and shunning evil ways, avoiding intoxicants that dull the mind, and mindfulness in all things that arise. These are the highest blessings. Respectfulness and of humble ways, contentment and gratitude, and hearing the Dharma frequently taught. These are the highest blessings. Patience and willingness to accept one's faults, seeing venerated seekers of the truth, and sharing often the words of Dhamma. These are the highest blessings. The holy life lived with ardent effort, seeing for oneself the noble truths, and the realization of Nibbana. These are the highest blessings. Although involved in worldly ways, unshaken the mind remains, and beyond all sorrow spotless secure. These are the highest blessings. Those who live by following this path know victory wherever they go, and every place for them is safe. These are the highest blessings. And then let's end with a mantra from page 3. So let's chant the Tara mantra, number 4. So homage to Tara, compassion expressed as enlightened activity. And just feeling into how this might resonate or open a sense of support, or what our heart wants to bring through as well. Or just letting it simply resonate, however it's working for you. Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha. 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 Just allowing ourselves to feel the resonance of those chants or the vibrations as they're coming through our body. Or just allowing ourselves to settle and feel into our arrival here. Be letting our attention sink through into our body. Maybe the sense of the weight of our body inviting us to touch the earth and feel the support, the connection with the earth underneath us. This earth that nourishes and sustains our body, which is woven through actually our being. Be noticing how, if our mind is active, that can often draw us up or out of our body. So just reminding our attention to pay, to kind of listen into how the weight of our body invites us back to the earth. Feel our connection there. And how the rhythm of our breath invites us back to our aliveness. Yeah. And our breath reminds us that we're nourished and connected each moment. Maybe we would just want to stay with these very simple reminders of our connectedness, our aliveness, and rest the mind here. Or if we want to, we can also just incline our listening to a sense of energy or willingness to be here, to listen, to explore what it's like to be here. A willingness to explore our deep potential as humans. Open beyond ideas or impositions. To our own sense of willingness, curiosity, or listening. Which keeps us coming back to explore. As we enter into our sense of our own practice, we can be becoming more aware of what is it that draws me here, that sustains the listening, the attention to keep coming back. Not to get hold of that, but just to honor, acknowledge, get to know more. Sense of willingness and energy in practice. And in exploring our deepest potential as humans. As we come to the end of the meditation together, as always, I like to remind myself to the quality of attention, the quality of listening, the grounding that sometimes we attune more to in taking moments of quiet. These things come with us, so we can keep some of our radar, keep some of our attention with them as we come into more engagement. You're already opening your eyes if you wish to. So today, yes, I was thinking about the theme to talk about, and I wanted to talk about the theme of aditana, or it has various translations, which I'll say more about. So determination, commitment, foundation, sometimes resolution. And as I was thinking about this, I realized that I talked about this theme at almost this time last year. And then I was recognizing how much has been happening in the world in one short year. It feels like, although we weren't on necessarily a good track before, we're really we are showing our potential to really mess up and cause a lot of harm as human beings. Yeah, the genocide in Gaza, the US elections, the ongoing climate harm that we're creating. It's all of those. It feels like, yeah, there's an awful lot happening in that realm, as all of you are aware of. And so it, and then I was thinking, and part of why I find the Dharma really valuable is that there are themes that I dip into like over and over again, and maybe an understanding evolves or deepens, or there's a change in one's being actually in relation to particular qualities that we can come back to contemplate or dig into. It's like, it's kind of, it's said very classically, isn't it, that there are the different stages of practice, of study, practice, realization, and there's something about weaving back through different themes that for me it's like, where is this in my being now? How is it coming through now? What is the source of it now? And I realized that this term aditana, or determination, is among one of the many themes which I do that with. So I wanted to share a bit more around that. And first of all, I wanted to say actually how there's been a shift, there's been an inner shift in my practice in relation to this that I feel is maybe relevant to many of us, where I feel like actually my sense of what practice is and why I'm coming to practice and what the source of that is and where I want that to go, or all of that is actually a continually changing process, because it feels like as the Dharma helps my heart to deepen, or helps our hearts to deepen, it shifts our sense of being somehow. And so the sense of where is my energy coming from? What do I want to use that for in practice? That also necessarily shifts, and this touches into the sense of aditana. So initially for me, as I came to practice, it was, I kind of had a sense of falling in love with the sense of we have a deeper awareness that can hold fear, it can hold maybe forces of hatred, delusion, greed that might be coming in very slippery ways, and that awareness can help us to hold and have perspective. And so my practice was really, really based in that sense of love, of that we have this deeperness. And I feel like I've been very privileged to have time and space and safety to delve into that. And that's more or less the case for different people. And then as each one of us deepens in our practice, and certainly for me, as I had the possibility to practice, that there became an awareness of becoming part more of a web of life, that in our Western culture, we don't necessarily have that strongly imprinted. It's much more individualistic. But this sense of interconnection, of nature, of that we have a deeper awakeness in our heart. And then attuning to that, there's a shift in priorities. It's like not just my release from suffering, but freedom, as the Buddha says in his teaching, freedom from affliction for oneself and for others. So when the mind is afflicted, we don't see for our own well-being or the well-being of others. And so coming back more actually to practice for that sense of wider life or Sangha in a deep sense. And then with that, a kind of motivation to look into blind spots, to look into ways in which I may be holding things that are not helpful for others, even if that's not my intention, say. And also this sense of the source of practice being a kind of profound aliveness, wanting to come back to that somehow. And that then the ongoing daily practice is not so much about me and mine, but it's like, how am I staying present? How am I perpetuating harm or not? And so I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but it's like the shift of terrain of practice starting to shift, and where the energy for that is coming from also shifting. And this relates to me to aditana because it's a sense of being willing to keep going, being willing to thank you, Jilna. Yes, so Nadia is asking, thank you, Nadia, what does afflicted mean? And Jilna, to be troubled or disturbed by something. Yeah, so it's a kind of particular word that is used in the text to cause affliction can be to cause harm to something, to cause harm to one's own being or to another being. So an afflicted mind state is one that it's injured or it's holding the capacity for harm in some way. Yeah, so thank you, Nadia. That's a really good clarification. So the reason I'm saying all of this is that there's a shift in the sense of kind of resolution. Where is my practice coming from? What do I want to be doing with this? And I think there are many ways that one can come into this, but I basically wanted to talk a little bit more about this whole area, about aditana as foundation, commitment, determination, or resolution, and how looking into this may support our practice and our capacity to be in the world at the moment, and how we relate. This word aditana, it's most commonly known as part of the scheme of the parami, or so-called qualities that help us to cross life's floods. So it's pretty flooding right now in life. And it's interesting how these floods are talked about, because I think it's very relevant. So aditana is one of the qualities that can help us to cross life's floods: determination, commitment. And the floods that are talked about are I'm just going to say very briefly, because I think they relate to a lot of what's happening right now in the world, is the flood of sensuality. So where we're not aware of our relationship with the senses, and we overconsume, or we objectify, and we take and we use, and we're unfulfilled, so we want more. So it's a very unaware relationship with sensuality that I think is very, very present in our modern conditions and modern Western conditions. And what the US administration is doing at the moment, say with the national parks, or the way that people are being treated, it's like it's I mean, it's mixed with all the other floods, but one element of this, it is very strongly for me what's happening there. Or yeah, like the movement into Gaza, and we'll just take, and we'll, you know, objectify, and we don't care. And there's one element of this way of relating that it's about objectification, consumption, complete disregard for the aliveness of the web that we're part of. The flood of views that comes with that unconscious way of relating, the way that we cling, and we make stories, and we can justify, and we beat each other up, you know. Or the flood of becoming, which is how all this takes on form, and the flood of ignorance, which keeps all this in the shadows. So determination, I mean, that's a very brief summary in my interpretation as well, but it's like the quality of determination or commitment or resolution helps us to stay somewhat centered and willing to see clearly, or willing to take a different stand amidst these floods, however they're affecting us in our lives. They're a reminder that we have tools, actually, and that we need to lean into those tools to find our resources to stay connected with each other, with creating well-being, with creating freedom from suffering. And this relates to another thing I wanted to say about aditana, which is it's very easy to hear the word determination. And even in practice, we can take it as like power over. And a lot of what is happening in the external world is manifesting a power over from all these floods of unconsciousness. And aditana as determination, for me, it's not just willpower. It's not just power over. So, like when we in practice, say, when we want to have power over something, it's like, I will, you know, the image of the Buddha sitting down, and I will sit here until my, you know, blood dries up or whatever, and I'll just keep going. Or the kind of determination that he displayed before enlightenment, where he pushed and pushed and pushed and disregarded his body. And then actually what happened? He realized he was on the wrong track. He started taking care of his body. He touched the earth. He touched the earth as a witness to his awakening. A different form of determination. And for me, it comes back much more to like the kind of power with life. So again, this like sense of coming back to a sense of aliveness that is not being formed up by greed, not being formed up by hatred, not being formed up by delusion, but in that there's a fullness, there's a capacity, there's a cooperation. And Joanna Macy, as many of you know, I love her, the way she talks about power with, where we're tuning back into all the resources of the earth, say, or the tuning back into our interconnectedness, and power with is working with that to enhance conscious participation in life, is how she talks about it. Or this kind of different form of determination that is not willpower, just willpower. There can be a certain I will stay with something, but is my resource power with the sense of interconnectedness, or the kind of power that comes from contemplating what inspires us, what we're moved by. So another way of coming into this softer form of determination that is still very strong is to contemplate willingness and faith. So Ajahn Sucitto, in his book on the Parami, he talks about the importance of faith not as belief, but as the intuitive sense that there's a meaning and there are aims and energies that are worth more than just getting by. And so if we're tuning into our willingness, and we're tuning into the energy that comes with that, it's like there's something very true that can come through our being. And that's a different form of like determination, a different form of commitment, because we're attuning to what feels true for us. And we're willing to keep reflecting, is this for well-being, for my own well-being, the well-being of others, or not? So it's a reflective process. It's a kind of faith that is different from belief. And it's this willingness, this bringing our aliveness in, that I think is very, very important. And is very pertinent to both practice and I think to how we are in the world, because there are so many confusing and harmful and distressing and disempowering things happening, that this capacity to come back to our own sense of resolution, aliveness, values, that the quality of Aditana is pointing us towards, is, I think, very important. And I was just reading from someone who you may have heard of, called Prentice Hemphill, who they're talking about this kind of coming back to one's own sense of life and value. And for me, it relates to the sense of resolution or determination, because they say, do I try to become something that I never will be and therefore live with this perpetual insecurity? Or do I do what can sometimes be very lonely work of maintaining my own dignity and insisting on my aliveness, that I am here, that I am valuable, and that the reality of my life doesn't necessarily match the world we've constructed as human beings? So this, I mean, they have a lot to say that is really valuable, that I would really encourage you to look into. But they also talk about coming back to this sense of aliveness, and aliveness as one's own presence and the larger life that we're part of. And so this is a very, very powerful force for resolution, for determination, for calling up our deepest capacity that is not power over. And yet it's also empowering. And then, so then I want to come back to the very classical teaching on this, because I think this is also, it's got a lot to give us in terms of indicators of where we can look to look into in our being. So let me find the quote. There's a quote that I put in the send out for this session that is from the Majjhima Nikaya, 140. And it's using this word adhitthana, or determination, or commitment, or foundation. And it says, this person has 4 foundations. The foundation of wisdom, the foundation of truth, the foundation of relinquishment, and the foundation of peace. One should cultivate relinquishment and should train for peace. So everything I've just been saying about the sense of determination as being a very powerful force and coming away from the power over model and coming more into the aliveness of alignment in our being. For me, this is present in that very classical teaching. So to have the determination or the foundation of wisdom or discernment, it means we're willing to explore, to look into conditions, to notice the impermanence of things, to notice the elements, that we're interconnected. And we can take, say, impermanence to a very transcendent conclusion, like, oh, well, it's all impermanent, so I'll just come to, I can just stand aside. But there's always this emphasis in the Buddha's teaching of, when our mind is not clear, when we're not in wisdom, we don't see what is for our own well-being, the well-being of others, or the well-being of both. So a determination towards wisdom is both wisdom to see, say, impermanence, to see even non-self in the elements, but then what happens with the teaching of, is this for my well-being, the well-being of others, or both? And so there's a meeting in wisdom there, where we can both have spaciousness and engagement. And then the determination to guard truthfulness, which is talked about as moving towards the undeceptive. So thank you, Carolyn. I'm glad you could be here. I spoke about truthfulness a few weeks ago and how crucial this can be in our path. And I do think to guard truthfulness in our times, which is not a fixed position, and yet is very important, to be willing to look at what is happening, to be willing to feel into what is happening. Where do I need to resource to be able to stay present? And what is truly for well-being or for release of suffering? So there's something very, very strong about this. Although we can't say there is a truth, there is something about meeting our conditions with truthfulness and questioning, where is there harm? Where am I perpetuating harm, or where am I perpetuating well-being or freedom for myself and others? So that's a very powerful doorway. And then the determination towards relinquishment of what? And in the sutta, the Buddha talks about relinquishing greed, hatred, and delusion. So this can happen in many layers within our being. It can be internal, things that we're holding that are harmful. It can also be a deeply compassionate place where what needs holding, and still there's a strength, and what is harmful here, what needs releasing. So there's a clarity or a determination in questioning that is very compassionate and is also willing to be clear. Yeah, and then within this, the last quality, the determination towards peace. It's like this is training towards peacefulness within the storms, internally and externally, being willing to come back there. And in the sutta itself, it's quite going towards the transcendent, the sutta. So it even talks about like letting go of that which sustains us hearts. So I consciously called this session actively sustaining our hearts, because it's like what nourishes us, what helps us to stay determined in a wholesome way. And in the sutta, where this quality is mentioned, it's talking about part of it talks about letting go of sustenance. And when the Buddha's talking about peace, he says that in the determination towards peace, a sage at peace is not born, does not age, does not die, is unagitated, and is free from longing. They have nothing whereby they would be born. Not being born will they age, not aging will they die, etc. And so there's a letting go of agitation, and in a certain way that's peace. And I do think this coming back to the place in the heart where we have a depth and a capacity of listening, and the spaciousness that's there, I find that that's a very, very important resource. And yet there's always this paradox for me in the teachings, which I really I think is deeply important, where it's like the question, and what is for my own well-being, the well-being of others, or both? That we have this spacious, awake heart, and we have also our embodied being, and how do the two meet? And even in this sutta, which talks about, it does go more towards the undeceptive, towards the unbinding, the unformed, towards this place of non-birth. And then at the end, the person who's asking the questions in the sutta, he says, oh, and I'm sorry because I called you a friend, the Buddha. And the Buddha says, you're right, you shouldn't call me a friend, I'm your teacher. And then the person says, I'd like to ordain. And the Buddha says, well, actually, have you got a robes and a bowl? And the person says no, and the Buddha says, go get your robes and bowl then, so you don't just escape the conventional realm. And there's something about, and then actually the person gets killed by a cow, and he's like, that's the end of it. Well, he's realized, but that's the end of the sutta. But it's, there's we don't escape, and the meeting of the conventional and this spacious heart, and there's something so powerful. There can be such a resolution that comes through, a determination that comes through. How do I bring these things together? And we need to be each finding this within our own being. So yeah, so I'm coming to a close, and I hope there are some things in there that were useful, and anything that's not, you can let it flow by. But just to say that, this quality of determination, so the word aditana, in Pali, the first part of it, adi, means further, higher, or fuller. And tana means foundation or standing place. So this reminds me of a kind of standing place here that is beyond what we know. And so there's something about tuning into our aliveness, into what we really value, into our sense of interconnectedness, into the sense of the possibility of our boundless heart also. It's like a standing place beyond what we know, and how do we bring that into this world, in our own being, and in the conditions that we're part of. So yeah, so I think it's a really powerful one to contemplate and to delve into, actually, like as we need to be doing right now. So I'll end there, and thank you for your presence, for your listening, for your practice. And so there'll be a time now for questions or sharing, but if you need to leave, you're welcome to leave. And also, just before you do, I'll put the links in the chat to if you want to offer dana to SMS, and also there are some upcoming events. So there's a retreat with Yang, and another one with Dawn that are coming up soon. And there'll also be an Earth Day event, and various other things happening. So please do take a look at the SMS website for those things. So thank you. Thank you, Nadia. Beautiful. Thank you for being here. So does anyone want to share anything or ask anything? Mille merci. Mille merci à vous aussi. What is the Prentice Hemphill sauce? So, if I 1 minute, I'll just get it. It was an article on, it's an article that's available on the internet, and I'll make sure that that link goes up with the YouTube. So, yeah. Okay, does anyone want to share anything? Or ask anything? Sarah, you need to unmute.
Yes, I don't know that I have a well-formed question, but I don't know that I'm so very well acquainted with Abhidharma, but when you speak of determination, and you've given, thank you so much today, Sumedha, because you've given me something to go and absorb and meditate upon, literally. But I'm wondering, determination, shall we say, to one who's given to determination the kind of Western driving, pushing force. And getting older has forced me, I'm not able, my body can't drive and push like that. And I need a new reconfiguration of determination in this concept. And this sort of determination is not then a driving determination, but how would you characterize it? It is not a driving, but it's not a striving, but is there some other concept I could put in there to have a steadfastness, but not that compulsive sort of energy?
Yeah. So that's I think it's a really pertinent question, because, yeah, most often in Western society, we associate determination with that drivingness. And so say, for instance, in the teachings, there is a text that says, and we used to contact, I was in a monastery, I was in a Theravadan monastery for about 12 years. And it's very interesting because I'm a person, or it was interesting for me because I'm a person who has quite a lot of striving, a lot of pushing, a lot of like, and in the tradition I was in, it was quite hardcore. You know, it was like meditation at 5 a.m. and, you know, sometimes meditation then through till 4 a.m. And it was actually in that tradition that I learned to look at the harmfulness of a driven determination. So, and in that tradition, sometimes it would be quoted, this teaching, you know, so now I will go on into the struggle, because this is to my heart delight, and this is where my heart finds bliss. And it's like, you know, you're going down the motorway. And actually what I learn is that to sustain practice, or to sustain a practice in which one's being is opening, there's much more of a resting into what do I love in practice. And so then there's then I've thought about that, because there's a lovely mantra which is, the words are something like resting. Oh, I'm going to chant it because it wants to chant. Resting. Hang on a minute. Resting, resting deeply, I return my heart to the one who listens deeply to the sounds of the world. And so it's a very, very different sense of I will give myself. So there's still a sense of giving of oneself, and giving of oneself very fully, but with that sense of where am I resting my being, and what's it bringing through, what's the effect. So, and as you say very aptly, where sometimes when we've got that tendency very strongly, life will often bring us things that entail a reorganization, entail as a, kind of reformulating. And it's just that we can also do that consciously. We can recognize if a particular energy is helpful or not helpful in our being. Does that respond to your question?
Oh, very much so. I cannot thank you enough.
Thank you, Sarah. Oh, please sing the resting chant again. Okay, I will. It's a lovely chant from now. I learnt it at Gaia House, and it's Caroline Jones, I think, who created the tune for it, who's now a teacher at the Forest Refuge. So, resting, resting deeply, I return my heart to the one who listens deeply to the sounds of the world. Thank you, Deb. Yeah. So sometimes actually accessing also practice in different ways, allowing oneself to take a different posture, chanting, all of these things. It's like what helps bring balance actually also. Yeah. Anybody else? Wow, I seem to have stunned everybody into silence. Well, so maybe let's just sit together for 5 minutes, and if anyone at the end of that has anything burning they'd like to ask or say, then that's welcome, and if not, let's just finish with a moment of practice together. And of course, if you need to leave, you're welcome. So I'll just get my bell to ring a bell. And in this time also we can be sharing blessings as we feel into our connectedness, feel into our connection with practice and where that comes from, what it wants to offer into the world. Letting all that resonate and come through in our being as we sit together. So as we breathe in the nourishment and support of the sacred web of life that we're part of, breathing blessings back out into this world.